For 30 years now, really, I have been privileged to be at the forefront of this movement, which is dedicated to the building of the Holy Temple and to raising consciousness as to why it's important, not only for Israel, but for all mankind. And this movement, what we could call temple awareness, temple consciousness, preparation, the growth of this movement has been phenomenal. And now it's become very mainstream, to the extent that large segments of Israeli society are behind it. It's even discussed by members of Knesset, the whole problem of the Islamic control of the Temple Mount and the fact that Jews and Christians are not permitted to pray there. These things are part of the public awareness now and consciousness like never before. But again, the concept of the Holy Temple is something that is applicable and important for all mankind, not only for Israel, because according to every prophet of the Bible of Israel, the Holy Temple, it's about the restoration of God's honor, as well as the spiritual rectification of man's relationship with God and indeed the hope of mankind. It all depends on the Holy Temple. And really, the prophets tell us that the hope of the world is dependent on the Holy Temple, right? We read in Isaiah 2, it will happen in the end of days. The mountain of the temple of the Lord Hashem will be firmly established as the head of the mountains, and it will be exalted above the hills, and all the nations will stream to it. Many peoples will go and say, "Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the temple of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For from Zion will the Torah come forth, and the word of Hashem from Jerusalem. He will judge among the nations and will settle the arguments of many peoples. They shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will not lift up sword against nation, and they will no longer study warfare." Sounds basically like the United Nations, what the United Nations is supposed to be.
An altar for the third temple. This has prophetic significance. The reconstituted Sanhedrin in Israel has released a declaration to the 70 nations for Hanukkah to be read at a ceremony in Jerusalem. Now, obviously there are more than 70 nations. Just look at the roster at the UN. But that number, going back to the ancient Near East, going back 4,000 years, that number has special significance. The number 70 in this context represents everything else other than Israel. In other words, the entire world. This declaration is to be read on the last day of Hanukkah, which is next Monday, December 10th. The ceremony will include the consecration of a stone altar intended for use in the third temple. And this declaration is an invitation to the nations to participate in the temple and to receive its blessings. The altar, currently in the form of loose blocks, ready to be transported to the Temple Mount and assembled on a moment's notice. When complete, the altar will measure 9 feet on each side, a square 9 feet across, and 5 feet tall, with a ramp for the priests to ascend. A full-dress reenactment of the daily offering will take place. This will be performed by Kohanim. These are men of the priestly caste who descend from Aaron, the brother of Moses. They've been identified, and they're being trained for service in the third temple. The location of this ceremony next Monday is still unclear. Authorities in Jerusalem are aware that if this is done in sight of the Temple Mount, there will be a violent reaction from Muslims. So, The question is another question, whether the Kohanim will actually ritually slaughter a lamb or bring prepared meat for this particular ceremony. This ceremony, part of the Sanhedrin's ongoing effort to establish a Bible-based international organization to replace the United Nations. A rabbi, Yoel Schwartz, has been charged with this task. He's the president of the Sanhedrin's court for the Noahides, which are Gentiles who agree to abide by the Noahide law. Those were the commands given to Noah prior to the law being given to Moses.